Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City Council meeting of June 4th, 2019. I'd ask everyone to join us in singing O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, thank you to the National Film Board for the images of our country and to some alumni of our very own Grand Prairie Boys Choir for the audio. We'll move into the adoption of previous council meeting minutes. Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I move the council adopt the previous Tuesday, May 21st.
Okay, thanks very much.
As presented.
Thanks, Councillor Minhas. Motion for the minutes of May 21st. Are there any errors or omissions or corrections that we need to make before we adopt them? Seeing nothing, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries, and we had another set of minutes to adopt as well. Can I get a motion for that second set of minutes, please? Councillor Minhas.
Yeah, I'll move the motion adopted minutes of the special city committee meeting held on Tuesday, May 21st as presented.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Minhas. That motion for the special city council meeting minutes. Again, any corrections we need to make before we formally adopt them, council? Not seeing anything? Then I will call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries as well. And that brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Bressy.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that council accept the agenda with the following amendments: the addition of item 8.4, accessible transit, and the addition of item 8.5, council leave of absence.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Bressy. Is there any discussion or debate on the agenda as presented? Those two amendments? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote on the agenda. Thank you, Council. And that motion carries as well. So that handles all of our preliminary business, and this brings us to the delegation portion of our agenda. This is an opportunity that we have at every regular city council meeting for anybody in the community to come and present on any community-related matter. Recognize that we have a full house this afternoon, and there are probably lots of people that want to present. We did have a number of people that gave us our names as they their names as they came in, and we will kind of go through the list. I think a number of folks had indicated that they had intended to speak, that they wanted to speak to council, and we will certainly make sure we have an opportunity for that. And then there are a few towards the end of the list that said that they may speak depending on if there's anything new to cover, and certainly would appreciate that. I have a sense that many people are here with regard to accessible transportation and accessible transit, no doubt. We're happy to have you here in council chambers today. And we will ensure that everybody gets a chance, everybody that wishes to speak will have a chance to speak. Typically, when we have delegations, we ask people to present for about 5 minutes, and then we'll have an opportunity for council members to ask any questions of the people who come forward to present. The only other thing that I would say for anybody that's wishing to come forward would just ask if you introduce yourself. I'll call your name, but if you'll just introduce yourself, and if you have anybody else that's with you, if you would introduce them as well, so we can make sure that we get your names correct for the minutes of our council meeting. Okay? So the first on our list that let us know ahead of time that they wish to present was Karen Bainbridge. Karen, would you like to come forward? In preparation, we did try to ensure that we had organized council chambers with with wider aisles to make sure people could get to the front, and we also removed some of the seating so that anybody that was coming in a chair would have some space at the presenter's table. The microphones are fairly sensitive, and so if you have them pointed towards your mouth, they should reach fairly well, and you don't have to lean right up to them. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. My name is Karen Bainbridge. I use the handy bus as a service to get me to and from medical appointments, social appointments, shopping trips, church, and other things besides that. I'm in a wheelchair, so also education, work, and I'd like to still be able to use the facilities at the Eastlink Centre and other centres like that. The problem we have is now that we're only doing priority 1 level bus services, which are for medical, employment and education, a lot of the people that use the handbus system who are outside of the wheelchair are the ambulatory ones that use oxygen and also a walker are not going to be able to have any service provided to them. And some of these ladies and gentlemen can't walk any further than their doorstep to the handy bus. So I was just wondering if the council is going to look at that and provide service for these ambulatory people who are on oxygen and or who have other disabilities that they still can only walk those few steps. They can't walk from their house to a couple of blocks or even across an icy parking lot to a bus stop. So I'd like to advocate on behalf of those people, because I feel that this is a service that we need not only for the wheelchair bound, but also for the people with walkers, and also we have a number of people who are hearing and sight impaired that use the handybus, and they also should have the opportunity to be able to have accessibility to services that take them from door to door, because that is what the service offers, is door-to-door service, whereas if we use transit, we have to go quite a ways to the nearest transit stop. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Bainbridge. And thank you for your presentation. I'll ask now, are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor, are there any questions for the delegation? I don't see anybody ringing in. So Karen, it looks like you're off the hook. Thank you very much for your
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you. The next on our list was Abigail Bullard. Abigail? Yes. Okay, you're next on the list. And if after Karen makes her way back, we'd invite you up to the presenters table at the front of the room here. Welcome. Welcome, Abigail.
Hi. My name is Abigail Bullard, and as you can see, I'm a wheelchair user. And I use the handy bus 5 days a week to get to and from college, and I also use it for social outings and anything of that nature. And it is very, very imperative that this service is something that stays intact, because, you know, disabled people need to be able to get around properly and have a quality of life just as much as people who are able-bodied do. And sorry, I didn't write anything down. It's just off the top of my head. But yeah, it's very important for us to have the quality of life that we deserve, and nobody should be limited in any way. I understand that to run the service the way that it was run before the cut downs, that it costs a lot of money, but there has to be a way to change that. You know, it's just, you know, again, I feel like I sound like a broken record, but it's just really, really important. I mean, I just, even for something as simple as, you know, going out and going for coffee with somebody, if somebody wants to go for coffee with their friend and it's a little far away for them, like, to think that they can't even do that, like, it's just simple little things that able-bodied people take for granted. You know, it's really important to us, like, the simple little things in life, when things like this happen, it really puts it into perspective, and it is imperative that something is done. And especially in a city where there's so many people who are disabled, you know, and not only the wheelchair bound, but those that have issues with their vision and their hearing or anything of that nature. Everyone deserves to have the same opportunities and the same rights, because we're all human. And I'm a really big advocate for everyone having the same equal opportunities and rights, and that's why I came here today, because I felt like I needed to say my piece. And I hope you will please consider what I've had to say.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Abigail.
Thank you.
You've sort of seen the routine once. I'll just ask in case there are any questions from any of our council members. Any questions for Abigail? Councillor Plot has a question for you, so you don't get to run away, Abigail. Councillor Plot.
Let them all just sneak away. Abigail, I really appreciate you coming in. I'm just kind of curious. You'd mentioned a couple of times you'd like to see something change. I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions of what you think we could change, because I think everybody in the room wants to see DTS do well and to be successful. Yeah. I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions for us.
Sure. And Abigail, I know that you might have moved closer so you could make sure that you heard Councillor Plot, but nobody will get to see or hear your answer if you're not back at the microphone. And so we want to make sure that...
Take a lap around the front here. And
Yeah, no worries. If you can be back at the presenter's table, and I'll even get Councillor Plot to restate his question so you can hear it again. But we just want to make sure that everybody else hears your answer as well too. And if you're there on the microphone, that's the way anybody that watches on YouTube or in the crowd would be able to hear your answer. So Councillor Plot, do you want to restate your question?
Yeah, I really appreciated you coming in, and just you mentioned a couple of times that you wanted to, you just want to see it work. And I'm just wondering, from somebody that uses it 5 days a week or fairly regularly, if you had any specific suggestions you'd like to make as well.
Well, I was thinking, so my birthday is coming up in about a week, and on Facebook you can choose to make a fundraiser and have people raise money for a certain organization. So I was thinking about maybe doing that if it was, at all possible.
It's really nice of you.
Thank you. 'Cause, yeah, like I said, it's just really, really, really important to me. I mean, it's obviously it's important for anyone, but I mean, especially, you know, being a young person, to have your freedom almost in a way ripped away from you. The feeling is indescribable.
Well, no, I appreciate that, and that seems like a very, very unselfish thing to do on your behalf, and it'd be great if you did something like that, and I really appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you. I just feel like, you know, even for the disabled people out there who have thoughts about this and they can't verbalize it, I thought it was very important for, you know, me or whoever can say their piece to say something, because, you know, you have to stand up for what's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Anything further? Thanks, Councillor Plot. I don't see any other questions, Abigail. Thanks very much for being here this afternoon. Thank you. Our next speaker that let us know that she'd like to come forward was Brianna Shalafu. Is Brianna here? Sorry, pardon me? No? No? Okay, that's no problem. I know it can be a little bit intimidating. We don't bite, especially from this far away. But I'll go down the list, and if somebody chooses not to present, that's totally okay. The next was Melody Debourree. Is Melody here? Melody, sure. Come on forward. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Council. As you know, my name is Melody Debourree, and I am a private carried. I've been a private carried for almost 8 years. So when I say private carried, I go to all the facilities and I work with the elderly. So more than anything, I'm here today to talk about the elderly and speak for them because they cannot get here. An example, this morning I was going to take a gentleman to Canadian Tire, and I called the handy bus and they said, you can no longer do that. I went back to his room and I told him you can't go out. If you would have seen his look on his face, it broke my heart. So that's why I'm here. I know I could go on and on. My biggest thing is, where did this start? Where did it come from? Is it funding? Is that the issue? Is there no grants? Like, why did this come about in the first place? That's one of my questions. And secondly, you know, why can't we throw it to the community before we start putting hammers on the board and nailing them down? Go to the communities and let them know what's going on. Then let's figure it out together. I just felt like it was a big bomb this morning. It was not very fair. And, you know, like last summer, I took a gentleman to the park, and he's in a wheelchair. I pushed him around. We got back on the bus, and he looked at me. He said, you make me want to live. He enjoyed 2 hours at the park. And you guys want to take that away? We got to find a way. We got to find a way. Let's do a big fundraiser. Get the community involved. Take the tech center and make it the biggest event there is. I'm sure the community will be there, and so will all these guys. So I hope that we can open the door more. But I'd just like to really know what started this in the first place, because it's been going for years and years. And I need to understand why this came about.
I guess that I'll respond to that on behalf of council at a really basic level. Nothing has changed with the city's funding since we approved the city's budget for 2019 in the fall of last year. And so the approved funding for DTS hasn't changed since January 1st. So the amount of funding that we approved last fall for the 2019 year is the amount of funding that is available for DTS. So there hasn't been any recent change in the city's funding.
So what brought this on? Just the community? Like, is it getting overused and underpaid? Or
to be really clear, the Disabled Transportation Society is an independent organization who operates the service, directly interfaces with the clients, and the City of Grand Prairie provides grants to the organization, as does the County of Grand Prairie and other funders. And the city also supports the organization by providing for their fuel costs and doing the maintenance on the vehicles. The city doesn't do any of the direct operation of the service. So the choices in how the services are delivered and when the announcement of curtailment of service came are probably best directed to the organization that does the operations, being DTS.
Okay. Because Like, I know some of these people only have a certain income, and those people that have a higher income, would there be an option for them to say, just mark it up a little bit better? Like, if our grants maybe cover more of the people that don't have the income to get on the bus, so that grant goes towards those, or, you know, increase the price a little bit to get more flow on it and the expenses down on it, kind of thing, an option.
So again, I believe that the rates for the memberships and the rates for the rides are all governed by the decisions of the DTS board,
Yeah.
not controlled by the city.
So can they do that though? Like, we go to them and suggest that to them?
Well,
Or you
the city,
guys,
the
like-
city doesn't have control over.
No,
the
that's what
membership
I'm trying to
fees.
get at is,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so just like any other not-for-profit organization or membership-based organization, the board of that organization has bylaws that they have to follow, and members that they're responsible to. The city is a funder of that organization today.
Yeah.
We provide grants to it and those other sort of in-kind services. But in terms of making determination about how much how much the fee is for riders, who can ride, all of those kind of things, delivery of the service, that is the DTS board.
yeah. You know, if this continues, I really feel like if we think the emergency is busy now, it's going to be busier because there's going to be a lot of depressed people. These young ladies won't be able to get out. They're going to go to their doctor, say, I'm very depressed, can't get out. Our winters are so long, right? We need to get out and not even be able to go and socialize a bit. If I don't socialize, I fall apart. So these guys need it. So thank you for listening to me.
No, absolutely. I do see a couple of folks in the queue, maybe with some questions for you, though, before we let you leave. Councillor Bressie is first.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming in today. I'd echo a lot of what you said in terms of the importance of the service and in terms of the shock of hearing this. It was the last I knew about DTS was a report we received from the March 12th that said they're going to finish the year in a financial positive. And until very recently, I thought that was their status. And first I heard about this curtailment of service was reading the same newspaper articles you likely read. And so I've shared your shock with the service. I still got questions of my own that I'm trying to figure out exactly what happened. I look forward to a meeting that is happening between the city and the DTS board this Thursday to get some clarity, because I've got a lot of questions in my mind too. And also I know I've had a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and a lot of in-coffee visits with people over the last week that depend on the service. And you're right, that look on their face, and I didn't have to break the news to them. I was following up with them, and still that look on their face was heartbreaking. So thank you for coming and make sure the community hears about this. A question I do have for you is, as much as I'm disappointed by the current state of affairs, and I wish it hadn't gone down the way it did, it strikes me that perhaps there's opportunity here in terms of if things need to change, we get an opportunity to work with DTS and potentially others in the community to say, well, what does accessible transit look like going forward? And I'm just curious, as somebody that works with many individuals, I've heard very changing opinions of DTS over the last year and a half in terms of it seemed to be going on a really good trajectory was the perception I got to talk to the community. But I'm just kind of curious, until the last 2 weeks, what were you hearing as you were working with a bunch of individuals, and are there any changes you see that maybe we should get some good out of this bad as we go forward?
Well, you know, if we're going to move forward and it goes in a good rhythm, the handy bus lacks on rhythm. It's really hard sometimes to get a hold of them, and I know they go through a lot of staff, it seems like, and maybe they need more bodies in there. I don't know. Sometimes if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I understand, but that would be my biggest concern, is that there's not much flow to it at times, and I think they're very stressed out there. I do. It must be a very hectic job at times, booking buses and people calling, because I know I've called several times and it takes them about sometimes 4 hours to get back to me in order to confirm an outing. So I hope that helps you.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Friesen also had a question. Councillor Friesen?
There we go. Thank you. It's more of a comment and a bit of an encouragement for you. I've heard some fantastic ideas from you, as from the previous speaker and the people that I've spoken to in the community over the past several days. And one thing that came out of the AGM for the DTS this year was that they committed to having a town hall this spring, and I don't think that has happened yet, but that is precisely the place where these kinds of ideas can come forward to the board of the society, who makes the decisions and looks for funders other than the city, and grants from the province, that sort of thing, and would consider ideas like the having those with higher income perhaps pay a little higher rate, that sort of thing. So I guess to everyone who's present here today, keep those things in mind, and when the town hall is scheduled, as was committed to at the AGM, then these sorts of things can be addressed by the board of the society.
Yeah, I feel like it really needs to be looked over totally and maybe introduced in a whole new route to make it successful.
I would certainly hope to see you there, and many others as well. I think you're on the right track, and I as Councillor Bressy said, was as surprised as anyone with the article, the first article, when I read it, and it's something that is very important, I know, to everyone who sits around this table, and we do understand the importance to quality of life for every single one of you. So thank you very much for what you do and for coming today. We do appreciate
love what I do, and I hate to see the buses not run, because after you take them out, the smiles on their face.
I know how much my mom relies on her weekly bus trips, and without that, life would be very different for her.
Just to get your groceries,
Exactly.
Gotta eat.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. I don't see anybody else in the queue, Melody, so thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next is Andriana Vandendergen. I tried. At first I was going to do Adriana, but then I looked at it and I'm like, no, I don't think so. You can correct me when you get up here and you get the microphone. We'll make sure that we get it right.
Sure. You can see I'm shy, right? Hello.
Welcome. Maybe you could introduce yourself for us.
My name's Adriana Vandenuggen.
Thank you, Adriana.
I've lived here my whole life. But unfortunately, MS has stolen my ability to walk, because I used to drive all the time. I take everybody who needed a ride to places, because my daughter she's special needs. It's kind of like Down's, but it isn't Down syndrome. But on top of it, she has stage 4 kidney failure. So our life has taken a downward spiral. But the bus has literally saved my life, because staying home was just way too much. And just to be able to go out to Walmart, everybody knows me at Walmart, to go to Walmart, to go to Tim Hortons to visit, to take Caitlin to go visit her other special needs friends, and getting her to our numerous doctor's appointments. The bus has been like a lifeline for us. And just the shock of this happening, it's almost, I agree with what everybody else with disabilities has said. It is our quality of life. And, just for her to go to Signature Support CCL a couple times a week is huge for her. Or she would just sit in the basement and play on the computer, and because she has gout and she can't walk very good. So walking to like a transit's pretty much impossible. But to get her, like everybody has said, there was really no time to prepare for this. But, yeah, the bus is huge, and I hope the city can help them find a way to make everything. I've never had, me personally, everybody knows me when I phone. It's like, well, they know me through drive-through when I used to drive. They're like, oh, it's her again. But yeah, they get back to me as pretty fast. Like, and if I leave a message, come pick me up, and then you're unsure if they got your message. You phone back and they're like, no, it's on the way. We have it for you. And, you know, when I need to get a squeeze in, they make everything, they try their hardest to make everything work. I don't know. What else is there to say? You can see how important it is for me. I just turned 50 yesterday, so God, get me out of my house. So that's pretty much it. And thank you for listening to me. But, oh, and my mom also is in a wheelchair at Margaret Edson, and she wanted me to say, she said, put my 2 cents in. For her, it's even hard to really, this week she was making a lawyer's appointment to change her will. And then the boss said, no, you can't. And it kind of sucked. Oh, oops, sorry. Yeah, I have verbal diarrhea. Sorry. But that's pretty much it. And yeah, I'm an open book. Ask me any questions.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Adriana, for being here, and thanks for helping me with my pronunciation.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Adriana? Councillor Friesen?
Thank you. Hi, Adriana.
Hi.
I recently had my 50th also, so.
I know.
Yeah.
They're like, 50 is supposed to be way better.
Yeah.
I'll have to wait and see.
Waiting for that, hey? Yeah, I thought everyone would suddenly respect me, and that hasn't appeared to be the case. Yeah. My question, you mentioned signature support services with your daughter.
Yes.
So I assume that's funded under PDD, which is provincial?
Yes.
Yeah. Is any part of that funding also for transportation for her?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
But is it full-time care for her when she's outside of the home?
It's like for her worker?
Yeah.
Okay, it's one that's shared with a few other clients there.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's
relatively high functioning.
But she needs help with like say opening a container. Her hands are really small, so she has a bunch of things she can't do.
Yeah.
She can drive her mother really crazy.
They always can, can't they? All right. Thank you very much, Adriana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. I don't see anybody else with any questions, Adriana. Thanks very much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you.
Presenting.
Stupid MS. Oh, I think my sweater's caught.
You're okay. You're okay. As long as there's enough clearance there. The next on our list was Maurice Arsenault. Is Maurice here? He's there? Okay. No worries, Maurice. We've got time. We've got enough room.
Sorry, I don't understand very good.
No worries. Now, Maurice, welcome. And you've sort of seen the routine a couple of times, but welcome.
Yes, hi. No, do I need to spell my last name again? Or?
No, that's okay. We've got it written down on the sheet here.
Okay, perfect. The reason I'm calling it, or I'm here, sorry, is I depend on the handbus to get around everywhere. My health is getting worse. I have MS. My health is getting worse day to day. It's affecting my balance. It's affecting my eyesight. It's affecting my speech. And it's hard to explain to you because I look fine. I know I look fine. But looking and feeling are two different things. That's the hard part for me that I find is I try and explain it to people and I don't really understand it. But the biggest thing for me is like this city is very difficult to get around in places. Sometimes we need the handybus to get us I'm stuck without that bus. Without the bus, I am doomed. I stay home every day. It's to the point now where they've decided that I have to either I'm going to a medical appointment or I'm not going anywhere. How is that fair for anyone? What kind of life would that be? What would I do for food? I can't afford to go out and pay someone to shop for me. I don't have money for that. So I thought just, like, what do I do? I don't understand how this service has gotten so bad so quickly, and now, like, I don't know what to do. I have personally myself, I could leave my house and travel down the road, which is pretty scary, by the way. And if you look at the back of my chair, I have one of those little orange X's so you can see, because people don't see me going on the road. There's no sidewalk on both sides of the street. There's only sidewalk on one side of the street. The sidewalks are, pardon my French, but horrible in the city. They're absolutely atrocious, and nothing is being done about it. I don't understand that. I have fallen in my power chair once already, and they've had to fix it because of the damage that was done. And yet the road still isn't fixed. It's a sidewalk. The sidewalk should be safe to go down. Should they not? Am I correct or am I not? Because I don't understand that part. Like, it should be safe for everyone to go down the sidewalk, but it's not. For me, I've had to take my chair and I go down the street when I leave my house, and I have to go down the street, not the sidewalk, because there's only a sidewalk on one side, and it's cement. I don't know if anyone understands or if you understand. The sidewalks here, when you go on the sidewalk with these chairs, it's bum, 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 and it's brutal. The amount of shock that runs through your body every time you hit those bumps. And it just, my eyesight with having a mess, my eyesight and balance are not very good to begin with. And to add to that, it's just horrible. I have to try and decipher everything from getting from one side to the street to the other. I have to watch traffic because there's only, like I said, there's the one side of the street you go down. You can't go down to both sides. There is, however, there is asphalt between the bottom of the street where I live and on just to the playground area. There's asphalt there, which is perfect. But that's only placed. Then it goes to cement, and again, just bump up, everywhere you go. And it's just horrible. They said they were going to fix the sidewalk. They fixed it again with cement. Same problem all over again. So I don't understand. Why is that not being fixed? It's not just that. I mean, there's situations I shouldn't have to go down the sidewalk. I would prefer to catch a DTS, but I can't. You have to give at least 2 days notice. And it's either, it's at the point now where it's either medical or you go nowhere. Now, how is that fair? I need to get out of the house to get my groceries so I have food to eat. I can't go anywhere. I'm not left much of a choice. Like, what do I do? That's it.
Okay, I see Councillor Bressie had a question. And just if I can ask one actually as well. Maurice, you mentioned that about a 2-day sort of calling ahead to book the bus. Can you speak to that a little bit more? So is it your experience over the last while? Was that since the change or prior to the change?
Sorry, that's been over the last 5 or 6 months now, probably longer than that. Mm-hmm. But you have to give them at least 2 days notice to catch a bus.
And so with that 2 days notice, could you be sure that you would get a ride?
You could be sure you get the ride. Mm-hmm. But the problem being is you have to make sure that you get everything, all your ducks in a row. I'm the kind of person so busy sometimes that I do lots of stuff. If you know me, you know that I'm very busy all the time. And I go from place to place. And I know people everywhere. And I do what I can to help everyone. Got some in the jar, I've got a mask. That's why I'm in the chair, so I've got a mask. I can walk, just not very well. So it's just best for me to stay in the chair. As the time has been going by, I said imbalance has gotten worse. So I'm trying to do what I can for everyone else at the same time, not so much to worry about myself, but now it's coming to the point where I need to worry about myself to help other people. And it just makes it tough.
I see Councillor Bressy has a question. Councillor Bressy?
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're here to talk about accessible transit, and that's why our galley is filled. But at the same time, you mentioned our sidewalks and our physical infrastructure, and that's something that I'm personally very interested in terms of the city's been working hard over the last couple of years to inventory our facilities, so our buildings, and figure out where our accessibility issues and how can we prioritize those, how can we address those. But I'd also love to see us do a little bit more work with our streets, our sidewalks, and that more prevalent, but also unfortunately a lot more expensive infrastructure we've got. I was kind of curious, this problem you're describing, is that an issue you're having with all cement sidewalks, or are you describing a particular one that's been in?
All cement sidewalks.
And is it, are you having an issue getting on and off them where they've got that transition to the gutter, or are you talking about those expansion joints just as you're going straight down them?
No, it's not. It's not getting on and off the sidewalks that the problem is. What the problem is it's the constant separation they have in the sidewalks. When you go on those signs, bomb, 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 every time you hit the split. So, and that's why I prefer when they've got the pavement in the one section, and that's great. You go down, and I can't wait to get on that portion. But then I get off, right back to the sidewalk again, and all the sidewalks still, I don't know why, but still have sand and dirt and gravel all over the sidewalk. How is a person in a walker or wheelchair supposed to get through that? You can't. I mean, it's difficult. It's hard for me, and I'm in a wheelchair, and I don't see that good. So it makes it even more difficult. I said this getting worse day after day after day, and that's due to my MS. And again, I'm not the only person in that position. There's lots of people in that position. So I said it's getting worse as time goes on, and that's to do with MS. That's nothing to do with you guys. What I'm hoping happens is that the city sidewalks and streets are fixed to the point where they can be used safely. I shouldn't, why should I have to go and get a fluorescent X put on in the back of my chair just to go to the store? Where I have to. So again, this cost me more money that I really don't have. Like, I mean, if you're disabled, you only have so much money to get through every month. Yep. And it's not there. So, I mean, it just makes it difficult to get around on these streets from time to time, and I don't understand why things are the way they are. Like, I've a couple days now, I've had to go down the street with my chair. I have no other choice. It's either try and get across the other side of the sidewalk, and that sometimes is a challenge on its own because there's cars coming at the same time. There's no safe place to cross. I'm sure you know what the traffic is like in Bainbridge. They go. They don't. If you don't go fast, you're gonna get hit. That's why I put this on the back of my chair to make sure that I'm safe.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I've heard some of these challenges. I've always appreciated the challenges sand and gravel would do and transitions, but I didn't realize that those expansion joints were an issue. So I learned something today. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bressy. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Maurice, thanks very much for being here this afternoon to present to us. Thank you. The next I had on my list was Marcine Hagan. Marcine? Hi, Marcine, welcome.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm not going to really go into a lot of detail other than we have a daughter in a group home which we own, and 2 other ladies live there. Our daughter's in a wheelchair. Minimum, she's at East Link about 3 to 4 days a week, plus she uses it for swimming, her PARs, and church. So her activities are going to be really limited. If she has to use private transportation, it takes 2 people, and they have to take her wheelchair apart to put it in a vehicle for her to go. I think the biggest picture here, we know everybody needs it. And I'm wondering if it's been looked into, what do other cities the size of Grand Prairie do for their transportation for disabled people? Because everybody has disabled buses in their communities. How are they funded? How are they operated? Who's responsible for them? I've noticed in the past year, the staff at our house has been telling us that either the bus hasn't showed up, or when they do go somewhere, they can get there on time, but after, they never know when they're going to come home. They could wait up to an hour and a half before they're transported home once their activity is finished. So I think there's a real need for change, and I think that we need to look at what other communities are doing and how they're running this transportation. Grand Prairie is growing. The need for our transportation is much greater. We have a lot of aging population here, lots of seniors who are depending on this now. So the demand has gotten to be so much greater. So lots of times the bus has been canceled. They don't have drivers, or they don't have enough buses to provide the service that they need to be providing. And that's what's happened for us this past winter. Up until this year, the service was pretty good, but we've seen a fairly good change in it this past year. So I wonder if the city has looked around at other communities, and if that isn't an option, that shouldn't be done.
I guess I'll just say that certainly at this stage, all the options are on the table, and the folks in our transportation department and administration are actively looking at other areas. We've also had a request for proposals or a request for information as a result of the regional handy bus study that we did with other municipalities in the area, because DTS itself doesn't just serve the city of Grand Prairie, and there are a number of other smaller services connecting Hythe and Beaver Lodge and Wembley. So building on some of that work, our administration is looking at other models, and a part of that work would be to look at other communities as well. Just from personal experience and sort of, I should say, observation, I note that there's a pretty wide variety and a pretty wide variety of handy bus style service, as well as some private service. And I've certainly heard both in my time on the board of DTS in the past and from people in the community that private options make up a fair bit of it as well. I talk to people in chairs who go on vacations, and people love going to the United States because they have certain requirements for accessibility. And I know even in Canada that in cities like Edmonton, smaller units make up another type of service. And so I think all of that's on the table, certainly from our perspective. And I believe our administration is actively looking at all those alternatives.
Because I think this crisis has made we're at the point where we need to look at alternatives, and it almost looks like it's beyond the society managing it themselves anymore without a lot of change happening. So that's just my suggestion, why I thought I'd have something to say.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here to speak to your perspective and insight. Does anybody have any questions for Marcine? I don't see anybody in the queue, Marcine. Thanks very much for being here this afternoon. The next was Joyce Sadney. Joyce, welcome. You've seen the routine a couple of times. Welcome.
Oh, sorry. Mayor, councillors, my name is Joyce Zadney, and I'm going to be brief because I think a lot of the points that I was going to bring forward have been covered, and we're just reiterating the same things. I have a husband in long-term care, and it is essential that people in wheelchairs have access to transportation. It's just their way of life will be curtailed so much by not having the ability to go to, to go to the museum, to go to Canadian Tires, all these places, church, and that will all be taken away from them. And a lot of the citizens that are in long-term care are people who have been in our community for a long, long time. They've helped build our city, and some of them may have been in a position much like yourselves, myself, and because I'm fortunate enough to be able to drive, to be able to walk, that disability does not discriminate. So I think we have to fight, and we have to fight hard to keep this service available, and whatever has to be done, if we have to be creative, whatever, but it has to be done. That's all I have to say.
Any questions for the delegation? Councillor Plot.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. Thanks for coming in, Joyce. Just a question, and it's been brought up a couple of times, but I'm kind of curious to hear from you as well. Just in the last year, do you think the level of services decreased, increased, stayed the same? What's your feeling with how the service has been around?
It's been said before that you have to phone 2 days ahead, and so you have to have, like the gentleman said, you have to have your ducks in a row, or it's not going to happen for you. I find the drivers have been extremely good. They help you, but they're not always on time. One episode I had this winter where my husband had to go to the dentist, and you know what dentists are like. I had asked to have him come an hour prior to the appointment time, and we ended up 3/4 of an hour after the appointment time. And so it depends, I think, on the days that they are really busy. They have more difficulty. To answer your question as to whether they're better or less, I don't know. I can't really answer that.
Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Joyce, I wonder, you mentioned long-term care, and I know that you're in an Alberta Health Services facility. And so in going by, I noticed that there is a Alberta Health Services vehicle that's parked in the parking lot. So have you only ever used the DTS bus, or does
we no longer are there. We now are in the care center. Okay. So, but I do know that they do have that private bus, and I don't know how much they were just getting that when we left. So I can't speak to that. I don't know how it works.
Okay. And so you're at the care center now. Do they have any vehicles at the care center?
No.
No. Okay.
No, they use the handy bus. And I think there's another lady that may speak to that after myself.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Joyce.
Thank you.
Oh dear. It's the second time we caught somebody. We have the microphones out a little bit further this afternoon, recognizing that for folks that might come in a chair, that having that little bit of extra reach might be helpful. But I appreciate that it's also a bit of a booby trap if somebody's standing up, and we've caught people's clothes twice now. The next on my list is Denise. Denise, are you here?
Sandy's going to go first.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Come on up, and if you'll just introduce yourself when you come to the microphone so we can make sure that we get your name for the minutes, and so that anybody that's watching knows who's speaking. Welcome.
Hi there. My name's Sandra Keene. Wow. My name's Sandra Keene. I am a full-time driver at DTS and have been for 5 years now. So since I've been there, we've gone through a lot of stuff. And basically, when I first started there, overbooked terribly because we have more and more clients coming on all the time. Like just this year, 60 new clients. So, I've done some research there. Red Deer has close to 30 buses. We have 9. 3 of them are circa 1970, right? And when you say, because I've been watching your city council meetings, and when I look at the thing and I see the feasibility study, and I've looked back at when we went union, and we went union not for the money. I want you to know that. We went for the clients and to protect ourselves, because they were front-end firing and back-end hiring, And the word was the city was going to take us over. And shortly after, when I look at the council meetings, that's what was going to happen. And then it just disappeared. So basically, when we look at the funding, and I've looked at the budgets, you guys say that we weren't cut this year. But I can see a definite cut of 58,000 of a deficit that you blame on us going union. And because it's out there, right? In the media, that's what you said. Oh, well, they went union, or that's what people say. I can tell you that...
I'd just like you to clarify, did you hear me or the city say that?
No,
or that's what people say?
Well, I mean, it's in minutes and stuff, right? Like, well, they went union or whatever. I just want people to know that we didn't go for the money. We went for protection. And when you look at what a city employee is paid, we are substantially less. Like on the grid, $7 less. And if you look at paratransit across Alberta, we're one of the last nonprofits. We went in good faith. What did we get? Next year, I got $50 shared RSPs. That's not too much, is it? It's not. Now, when I first started, we were so overbooked. 3 people every half hour, 4 different parts of the city. And, you know, then we have to be somewhere else in half an hour with 9 buses. Right? Sometimes we wouldn't have to phone, like we would switch off with another driver and they'd have to wait for our phone, right? Some of the problems in dispatch are, you know, people phone in a will call or whatever, we're using one line, right? So they're answering calls constantly. And those calls get put onto a answering machine, which they have to dig for because an answering service costs money. So one of the questions I want to ask you too, you say that we've got $1 million this year, but you don't speak to in-kind money that is fuel, maintenance, rent, that kind of stuff. Yes, we receive it, but we don't receive it. So then we got, you know, we had a deficit last year. You can see that all in your guys' budget. We had a deficit last year, and that was from going union to protect ourselves. Not for the money. And everybody can see our collective agreement on the QP site for themselves, right? So, so the 26% that you say that you've increased, is that our 6 buses? Like, is the 26, because I don't see it on your guys' budget. I don't. When I look at 2016, 17, 18, 19, I don't see the 26%. So I'm deducing that's buses that we had scheduled to have our old buses replaced, which we needed, right? So, I mean, in comparison, when I looked, Red Deer was 98,000. We're close to 70. They have close to 30 buses. We have close to 9. I know over the years that we've had a lot of challenges, and a lot of those complaints have come through you. And I know they have, because we get it back, right? So to say that you're surprised we're in trouble, I don't understand. I don't understand, because we're hardworking, right? And we try to accommodate the people who have bought memberships from us. So, and some of the things I've seen in your stuff, your rural handy bus stuff, it says in Grand Prairie and outside of Grand Prairie, right? And so 22 bus shelters, that kind of stuff. So what's the plan? What I wanted to know is, I want you to know that you have drivers here that are 30 years, 25 years, 20 years. There's not a high turnover. We have, yes, we hire casuals and stuff, but a lot of us full-times and part-times are all over 5 years, right? We know our client, we know where. So I'm just wondering, what's the plan? Or is there a side plan? Like, you guys, we're not worth it to you to look at us? You're just going to say to us that, you know, we didn't see your struggle? We didn't see your struggle? You did. You did. So I'm not here to accuse or anything, but I've looked at your guys' committees and the reports and the in-camera stuff that nobody can see. I've looked at the budgets, and I can see where we're falling short. We're increasing every year, and last year was even more of an increase. in clients. So I don't think it's a big mystery why we're going by the side. And then we put in a good management. We're making strides. I'm making it on time now, where we would just be not safe, right? We're doing the speed limit, but you know the traffic out there, right? And then you have no time at the stop. And you know, you got 3 people and you're doing the route and whatever. But I got to tell you, we have different clients. So I don't know what the plan is. It's not just the wheelchairs. We have people like Maurice who are continuing to decline. We have one of the ladies that I have that phoned and cried to me just the other day is blind. So now we're not taking her. She can't get on transit and go and get her groceries. You know, if we get somebody like a cab to do it, I've heard horror stories of that. And I'm not saying anything bad about the cab companies, but, you know, pop the trunk, watch them struggle, go get their walker, and then not help them with groceries. I've had to shovel people out of their care center and up here, and we do that to get them on the bus. We're worth a look. And I think that when people get on the site and they look at the actual budget, they can make their own minds up. Because I did. I looked at all. And I don't see where we're not part of this expansion, because it's obviously happening without us, right? A little upset, but I had my piece.
No, I appreciate you being here this afternoon to speak. You did at least have one specific question around the number of 26% increase.
Yeah, because I don't see it, actually.
That was the difference between the 2014 and 2019 funding, so that change over time. And it does absolutely include the gift in kind of paying for the fuel and paying for all the maintenance on the buses. And I believe that that's been clear, certainly in the information that I've posted and in City of Grand Prairie releases over the last little while. And so, yes, absolutely does include.
When I look at the budgets, okay, so in kind is stuff that the city keeps for us. So we get fuel, we get our rent, we get a place to be, and our maintenance, right? So it's a pretty high number. It's almost $400,000, right? Like when I look at it. So we had over $700,000 without our in-kind last year. Now we're down to $615,000, and you guys took another $60,000 right off the front end of our budget, it looks like. You can see that in your budget talks. I don't understand why you are surprised. We're having problems. When we've had problems for years, you fielded the calls, you know what's happening. We're overbooked. And why are we overbooked? Our population is growing. And I see probably 2 new clients every week. You know, it's not that we're a bad service. Now that we have a good management in place, we scaled things back, yes, so we could start building back up and making it on time. And we're starting to do that. Right? So,
sure. So I guess when with respect to the city's surprise, as you've heard Councillor Bressie say, and in our releases, we're surprised that the board of DTS chose to unilaterally curtail the service without working with the city to see if there could be a transition plan, and in a way that really had a direct impact on their users and their clients without an opportunity to figure out some kind of transition or change.
And I think they wanted to do that. I mean, as an employee, what I see is we're always hand to mouth, barely making it, right? We're underfunded. Oh, hey, payroll might be a problem at the end of the year. Years of it. Years. So a solution only needs 2 motivated parties. That's all. And that's why probably they came to this, because it's been years and years of nobody listening. Right? Nobody listening. And it's not that we're not, I know us as employees are very, very grateful. Very grateful. But the sad fact is that this population grows. I looked at even some of your statistics and your guys' stuff is that Alberta's going to grow in population by 1 million people this year. I think some of them are coming here, right? So, and it does happen. I'm telling you that this year, last year, I see a couple new faces every week. We need to accommodate them, but how do we do that with 9 buses? You know, 2 shifts, 9 buses, and 3 of them are like, seriously, have you rode on one of those old diesels? Because it's a rough ride. So if you get out of the hospital and you have a ride on a diesel, maybe you feel worse than when you went to the hospital. So that's all I wanted to say my piece, because I love this place, I love my clients, and I love my job. So I wanted you guys to know that.
Absolutely. Well, I see a couple other council members with questions. I see Councillor Friesen in the queue. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. Sandra, thank you very much for coming today. It's nice to see the drivers represented, and I've heard really wonderful things. I appreciate very much the care and the attentiveness that you give to the ridership. So in following the minutes, and it sounds like you're someone who really follows very closely and keeps up with everything, were you also following the minutes of the DTS meetings, the society board meetings?
Well, we're not privy to them, and I guess that maybe I should have. I've been following you guys because, I mean, since we went union, we were kind of wondering what was going on. So we're watching that, and you know, now that we have a good management in, we're just happy to do our jobs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So no, I guess maybe not as closely.
Okay. You mentioned when you were speaking that it kind of takes 2 to get together on this, and that's very much the case. And why I was wondering if you were following the society board meetings is because I actually did make a motion about a year ago that the city now assume operations, and it was
okay. So I saw
by the board.
Okay, no, I understand that.
So it's been at different times that we've gone back and
also going
forth.
to issue us ROEs and make us apply for our jobs back, and that's in a council meeting too. So yes, it is, and I've got it. I printed it out. So that is exactly the intent. And so maybe if the city was going to take us over at some point, that may be something they would have sidestepped doing and taken us in and with open arms, because we are the ones with the actual skill and the knowledge of the clients and their needs. But I don't think that was happening. When you can go and do the front end hiring and back end firing, and maybe that wasn't the city, but then right after that, issue some ROEs and, make us apply for our jobs. I can probably find that on your stuff. So it's in one of those meetings, in one of the sidebars.
Yeah, that would.
I know you're looking confused.
Stumped on that one. Yeah, there certainly are a lot of.
Are you saying that wouldn't be a possibility? Like,
it was never.
I would say
discussed to my recollection.
Not.
Well,
no.
Perhaps maybe it was just our worry, right? Maybe it was just our worry because we know that sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah, the complexities that enter in after the unionization became the intent would take a lot of consideration with HR, but that wouldn't be council discussions.
What happened with Cardinal, right? That's exactly what happened with Cardinal when they came over to transit.
Yeah.
They had to apply for their jobs back. We were worried. Yeah.
Yeah, and understandably, when that's historically something that you've seen. But yeah, I guess my point is there's been a lot of back and forth over the last couple of years, obviously, and it's never come together at the same time. And, to echo what Mayor Given said about the unilateral decision to suspend services within a few days when this was an ongoing issue, that's what was the surprise to us. But we certainly have been committed to supporting on an ongoing basis and have granted the advances and that sort of thing that have been requested. So that's really what the surprise was, as Mayor Given said. But Yeah, and again, thank you very much, and we do value the specialized service that you give riders.
I see Councillor Bressie is also in the queue. Sandra, just a second. Councillor Bressie?
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. As a person who goes back and does his homework, I always appreciate another person that does as well. And something I actually did over the weekend was I went back and I was hearing things in the community about DTS that I had zero recollection of, and even seeing press releases from the organization I was very confused about. Okay. And just to check my confusion, I went through all my notebooks on council, but I also went through all the minutes where DTS was an agenda item. Didn't find these things, and then just be careful. Just thinking maybe I missed something. I also went through the minutes of every single meeting we've had this term, and I couldn't find some of the stuff that I'm hearing the community.
Well,
community has said,
yeah.
But just
when I see something like that, I actually print it. So, you know, because for my stuff, so I don't. And maybe I'm off a little bit, but I'm pretty thorough with that stuff, and I look at the reports.
Well, thank you. Just speak to a little bit of where my surprise came from is the $58,000 you referenced. That's on December 19th,
yes.
19th minutes of a meeting. So, it was moved that council approved $615,750 in 2019 to the society, less $58,000 previously advanced CTS from the city's 2018 surplus funding. So you are sorry if I may finish. So you are right that that motion does exist, but it's because money was advanced from 2019, not because we lessened how much we were allocating in 2019. But I think where my surprise really comes in is that motion was passed in December, and then over 3 months later, on March 12th, if you go on the city website and you look through the minutes of the Community Living Committee, there's a letter from DTS. So again, this is months later after that total budget with that $58,000 advance not included in it. Months after that, what the letter says is on April 1st, so it says two things. It says, it lists some changes that were going to be made to increase efficiency. It said, these changes are due for implementation by April 1st, 2019. And then a couple paragraphs later, it says DTS will be able to position itself into a positive financial situation. I think that's where it surprised me, that's where I was really surprised by this in terms of the changes to the funding were noted. I think it's fair enough to say, hey, council, maybe in your 2019 budget deliberations, you didn't allocate enough for transit. Fair enough if you want to say that, but that was known. And months later, when we hadn't changed that allocation, DTS was telling us we will be able to position ourselves to a positive financial situation. And I think that's where the surprise comes from me, because that's the last I heard until 2 weeks ago.
I can understand that, because as a driver, I'm very surprised as well that was even something that thought could happen, because over the years, when we're making you're giving us over 700 and whatever, we're barely making it, and we're overbooked. And, you know, I mean, with 9 buses, our maintenance, you know, and one of those buses goes off, holy moly, now we have this amount of buses. Like, we have maybe 6 buses go out during the day, and then they go out in the afternoon, right? So we lose one of those buses. We were supposed to have some buses in reserve, so we used the old ones. But if we get 2 buses down, now the people that we have on our buses are laid across the other buses because we don't have extras, right? So I was surprised as well that there was no ask for more funding, because for years we've been overbooked and we're increasing, right? So yeah, I'm surprised too.
Well, and the last thing I wanted to say was, it was interesting. Throughout the election, DTS was a very big topic, and after we got elected, I think for probably my first 4 months on term, I probably got 1 or 2 calls a week from people expressing concerns. And then something that happened was I stopped hearing those concerns from the community, and thought, well, that's weird. Are they just giving up? And I started asking people in the community, how's it going? They were telling me it was pretty good, but something I've heard in the community again and again and again, and we heard it twice today, was whatever other challenges exist, people really appreciate their drivers. And I think that you guys have worked really hard the last year. Yeah.
Well, we love them. You know, when we did go union, I just want people to know that it's not okay to leave somebody at the cancer clinic for 45 minutes and then make them ride on the bus for 45 minutes. That's why the driver stood up here, not the money. And I'd like everybody to look at our collective agreement and tell us that's not fair, right? We're getting off in 40 below weather. We're shoveling to get people on. We love our clients. We're buckling them down. And if you look at our wage compared to transit, there's no comparison, right? So I just want to squash that because we went in good faith. We bargained with DTS in good faith. We knew it was a nonprofit. We didn't go for the money. We went for the protection for us and our clients.
Well, and your clients really appreciate you, and that's something I've been proud of every time of our community, that we've got people like you guys serving these people. Your clients really appreciate it. That's something almost every conversation I have with somebody who uses DTS, and I hear that. So I just wanted to make sure you heard that as well.
Thank you.
It doesn't look like we have any other questions. Thanks very much for being here this afternoon. The next on our list was Denise Lozelle. Hi, Denise. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Denise. I am also a DTS driver. I've only been casual for a year, but I'm also here representing my sister who is special needs. First off, as DTS, yes, I've been only casual, but you know what? With the hours that I've had, I've been mostly full-time. I've built a good rapport with everybody that I've served. I go beyond and above my job. I help seniors when they, carrying groceries to their doors. And, with all these new facilities, they're not wheelchair accessible. There's no buttons for them. I get off the bus. I help them to open the door, get in, get out, whatever. So I'm proud of how I've represented myself as far as rapport with them. Now, for my sister, she did take the transit way before DTS, okay? She learned the bus route herself. Now, the only problem was, if she wasn't there on time, bus doesn't wait. Come 35, 40 below, you know what? If the bus is late, she's out there for 10 to 15 minutes waiting for the transit to take to work. Now, how fair is that to say that it's all right for them, but, that the DTS is not a good service or whatever? I think we are good service. You also need to look at, people that have ridden it, the transit. That's the only reason I switched over for her, because it was a door-to-door service. And she had to walk a block and a half for her transit. And like I said, if you weren't there on time, it's gone. And if you were there on time and had to wait during winter, then you know what? It really sucked to be you, because it was cold out there. I've done it with her. And you know what? There's no greetings. There's no, they're not friendly. There's no hello or anything. You can turn around and say, have a nice day, but it's like, okay, I'm driving, whatever. So I think that we provide a very good service to the community.
Okay, thanks very much, Denise.
Thanks.
I see Councillor Bressie has a question for you. Councillor Bressie?
Great, thank you. Well, I did it earlier, and I'm going to do it again. I appreciate hearing about accessible transit, but you've mentioned something else, and I can't help but take advantage of expert experience when I see it. Something as I said earlier, we've been focusing on city facilities. How can we make those accessible? But I'd also love us to I'd love us to sometime this term, I'll spend some time thinking through how can we help non-city facilities, so private buildings, become more accessible and easier to access, and whether that's through stricter requirements on new builds or grants and training or incentives on older builds. And I'm just kind of curious, as I'm thinking through what that might look like and prioritizing that. As you're taking people to so many different facilities, I know a lot of the challenges in old buildings of town that have been around since we thought about this stuff. But how are you finding the newer buildings in town? Are they typically pretty friendly? Are you finding challenges equally with them, or?
They're just as challenging, because in Junction Point, some of those buildings, the doctor's buildings, they don't have, the ramps are wheelchair, they are wheelchair accessible, but they're far from the doctor's office. The doctor's office don't have the push buttons for them to open their own doors or whatever. They're taking away some of their freedom, right? So I don't mind helping them. But, somebody that's in a walker or whatever, or with a cane that can do it themselves, they can't because it's not there. It's not accessible. Even the inside doors, like you always have the outside and then the inside, there's no buttons there for them. So, no, you go in and you open up the door and have a nice day. So, but yeah, it's not just the old buildings, it's the new ones also.
Good to know. Thanks for that little bit of intelligence, and thanks for that service that you give them.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. And Denise, thanks very much for being here this afternoon. Next was Angela Salter. Hello, Angela. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Angela.
My name is Angela Way-Sather, and I would like to say, dear City Hall Committee, please give Handy Bus the funding for DTS, the Handy Bus. And then I am telling you guys that what the Handy Bus stands for, DTS stands for, which is Disabled Transportation Society Committee. Disabled Transportation Society, and I even drew you guys a picture of the Handy Bus on the back of the letter. And also, the Handy Bus takes wheelchairs, walkers, and people that are blind, and crutches, and seniors. Thank you for your time, and have a great day, guys.
Thank you very much, Angela, for your presentation. Thank you for being here to speak to us today. Thank you. I don't see any questions for Angela. Councillor Bressie will share those around to the rest of council. We'll make sure they're recorded with the minutes. We had a couple of other folks on our list that said that they may wish to speak, and so I'll check first with Jody. Jody said that you were maybe. So if there's something additional that hasn't been covered and you wish to cover it for us, Jody, by all means.
Hello, my name is Jody Boudreau. I am the Regional Manager for Independent Counseling Enterprises. So we as an agency provide supports for developmentally and physically delayed adults in our community. I've been working with them for the past 7 years, and boy did Handy Bus shutting down hit some of our clients really hard. We have one individual who operates a power chair, and I see several people with power chairs here today. With this specific individual, due to the positioning she requires, her power chair actually takes up a very large space as her legs have to be outright. We know that the city buses are wheelchair accessible, and fingers crossed they have sent her out today with her staff to attempt this and see, if it is doable for her. One of the problems we have run into, I have another individual who has autism and high anxiety. We sent him out on his first transit ride in April, and were met with some pushback from the driver. He was hesitant to step up. He has problems with depth perception on top of that. And they were like, come on, you got to get on. We got to get going. We have a schedule to keep. We can't wait for you. Either get on or get lost type thing. So I'm concerned moving forward that our individuals who can use the regular transit with their wheelchairs won't be given that time to get on and off as needed. And that, you know, it will push transit behind. And then I worry that the overflow effect on everybody else. So, I mean, I am curious, like I've directly from Handybus, what I am told is that the city cut their funding this year. I'm hearing that that's not in fact the case, just that they had gotten an advance. So it looks like a little less this year. I am hoping that the city, and I hear from Councillor Friesen that they had suggested that the city take over the Handybus services, and that was shut down. I hope that we could potentially look at that again in the future.
Sure. And just to clarify, I think what Councillor Friesen said was that DTS board had rescinded their interest.
Oh, okay.
In that. So the DTS board said, no, that's okay. It's important that we clarify so that everybody has the same understanding. And I'm looking at Councillor Friesen to make sure that I'm interpreting what you said was correct. Is that right, Councillor Friesen? Yeah, absolutely.
So my recollection, and there are some board members here who may also speak, I'm not sure if they're on the list or not, is that the motion was actually made late spring, that we begin a transition period, and that was defeated at that time by the board. It was actually a motion to begin.
By the board of DTS.
By the board of DTS, yes. Okay. And I'm the one who made the motion.
Okay, that was my understanding. And then also to speak to your question earlier to one of the other delegates regarding PDD funding and the individuals they support. Disability Services, as they call themselves now, does not provide any funding for transportation. The only funding they provide is for staffing hours. I wish they would provide for transportation, especially for some of our individuals who definitely require it more so.
Can I ask a clarifying question around that?
Sure.
Thank you. But that staffing assistance should cover transportation time for individuals who need assistance with transportation, shouldn't it?
It would cover the time, like their time. It covers the time for them to go with,
but not the bus pass necessarily.
Well, and the city has been very wonderful in giving our individuals bus passes, and we do have individuals who use the DTS with staff as well, but they don't provide for any extra funding for transportation, which means we would love to be able to put our own bus in play for our clients. And unfortunately, that is not a possibility.
Yeah. So then to further clarify, so a staff member would be able to accompany a client on city transit, for example, because their time is already covered. Can the staff member get on with the client who's received a bus pass from the city, or does the staff member then have to pay, or is that something that the city should consider?
The city should consider that. Currently, the free bus passes are only for the client, and then the client is required to pay for their staff to get on. So the $2 for their staff to accompany them.
Well, I think that's something. Okay, that's great to know. Thank you.
And sorry, we kind of caught you sort of mid stride there, and so we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to finish your presentation.
See, now I got distracted.
Yeah, I know. That's okay. And that was our fault.
No, most of what I had notes on, you've already covered, which would be, the feasibility study and the fact that, the city was looking into it and had put out a request for information for interested parties. So I feel like the city kind of knew this was coming, even if the quickness was a little surprising. And yeah, I mean, I understand that they are a not-for-profit and the city is not required to fully fund them. They do need to seek sources elsewhere. The county is giving them grants as well as other funders. And I just really hope that all of the funders can come together to get the system up and running again.
Thanks very much for your presentation. I see Councillor Bressy's in the queue. Councillor Bressy?
Great, thank you. I'm really glad you mentioned, like Councillor Spree's ears popped up. My ears really popped up there too, so I'm hoping we could do something about that. But in terms of the bus passes, but also just a little bit of context for that RFI as somebody on the committee that did it. I know that as I supported that process with the RFI, what I recognized was that as our population grows and as services need to expand, that there might be some needs for other services. And I also recognize that there might be some opportunities in terms of what DTS is doing in terms of you have to book two days ahead. Well, maybe with other providers, there's an opportunity for DTS to keep on providing that service, but there's opportunities for maybe somebody pays a little bit more to a private entity or somebody else to give that service. So I think the intent of the RFI really was saying that hey, maybe there's some opportunities or need to enhance DTS or backfill it as demand continues to grow. But at least as I supported it, it wasn't as holy smokes, we might need to backstop DTS to maintain what it's already doing. But I know for me, it's been a priority to not just maintain what we're doing. I'd like us to get better than the status quo on accessible transportation. And that's been something I've been wanting to see this whole term. And that's why I was excited for that RFI. So just wanted to provide a bit of that. Thanks,
Absolutely. And for the 48-hour booking, we have had individuals who have put in their booking, 48 hours a week ahead of time. We have one client who books a week at a time, and then they will get a phone call a couple hours before and say, oh, I'm sorry, your bus was canceled because somebody else needs it more. So that it's frustrating.
So from your perspective and knowing a bit about the clients that you work with, was that how common an occurrence was that? How often were people, in terms of reliability, how common an occurrence was that?
It seemed to be happening more so recently, but it also is an increased demand on the system.
Sure. Yeah.
And we understand, we have a number of individuals who probably could use the city bus, but use the handy bus for timing factors, reliability factors, because the city bus, drops them off 3 blocks from where they need to be, and then they get distracted walking to work and don't make it there.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Okay. I don't see anybody else in the queue for you, Jody. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you. The next on our list was Kelsey McInnes. Kelsey?
Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. My name is Kelsey McInnes. I am the Recreation Manager at the Grand Prairie Care Centre. We are a long-term care and supportive living facility for 120 Grand Prairie residents, and we rely solely on the handy bus for transportation within the city. So many of our residents are not able to utilize other taxis. They can't get into their sons' or daughters' vehicles anymore. There's a variety of reasons why it is solely their way that they get transported around the community. So I just wanted to start out by saying that the drivers are excellent. We have great relationships with them, and we have lots of favorites, and the fact that they know the residents so well really helps make smoother transitions. So if you ever, I would actually recommend that you ride along on the DTS so that you can get a good grasp of what is happening. So you're not just, get on the bus and there you go. You have to lift each one individually in the bus. Then there's straps that have to be used. So each wheelchair will have 4 straps that'll go on each tire, as well. There will be a seat belt that comes across. Sometimes if we get one of the older buses, maybe one of the straps is missing, and then you've got to reorganize everything. So the time to load people and unload people, it varies greatly on who's coming. So the fact that a lot of the drivers know our residents so well, they help that process be as quick as it can, which is really appreciative and really makes it more efficient. We know that when people have meaningful interactions, that in a social sense, in a recreational sense, that it has positive effects on their mental well-being, their emotional well-being. We know that it can decrease depression, and it decreases anxiety, it boosts mood, and it strengthens social connections. So, allowing people to get out in the community and be with their friends and be with their families. I think nobody can underestimate that. So approximately a year ago, I would say, there had been some changes to DTS. There was different management happening. We did feel some of the changes at the care center. We were told that we had to cut down our outings. So we went down to 1 day a week. We have 1 day that we are able to book. That's for 120 residents. Not saying other people don't book, other residents don't book their own personal outings without us, but as a facility, as a recreation department, we have 1 day a week that we are able to take people out. So we have 120 residents. And, if they need to go with somebody as far as a recreation staff, that doesn't provide a lot of option for getting out. So we're already strained as to how often we are able to get our residents out into the community. And now, as you know, things have decreased even more so. So I'm here speaking for a lot of the residents at the care center and their family members who can't be here today because we weren't able to book a bus today, right? So I just wanted to reiterate that, coming from a long-term care perspective, it is very important. We are one of the facilities in towns that do not have a private bus. So even though we are a private facility, as is Prairie Lakes, the Gardens, we're kind of all on the same par, but they do have a bus that they can use for residents. Now, I'm not sure to the amount that they use it. I know I've heard, through the grapevine and through other employees that it could be used more because they don't have the staff to run the bus. So sometimes I feel like the pressure that's coming on the DTS is because not only is our city growing and there's facilities getting built farther and farther away. So I know in Claremont, when the seniors facility in Claremont opened, that really put a lot of pressure on DTS because now instead of just driving within city limits, we're driving all the way out to Claremont, and that's taking up a lot more time. Which I'm not saying that those people there don't deserve to have a way to come in, but we have to realize that is a big factor. So after we were down to 1 day a week, we're also told that we had to kind of go from point A to point B. So we used to go on scenic drives, we'd get a Dairy Queen, and we'd go around and we'd look at the fields. And if you are a farmer that grew up in Grand Prairie area and you're 85 years old, seeing what stage the crops are at is very important to you. So, but you know what? We said, okay, we understand that. It's a busy service, so we don't do that anymore. So as far as how I see it, and again, I'm just kind of a third party looking in, but the organization needs to be fine-tuned, definitely. So a lot of times I'll notice that we'll have our bus booked for 1 o'clock, and our folks will get in and they'll go on their outing, and then another bus will arrive at 1:15. So to me, I feel that there's some organizational things that could be tweaked. So, if there was, a computer system where people could say, this bus is here, this is how many spots are left, can you get on here, instead of just, not working efficiently and then requiring multiple stops all over town. And as well, when other facilities have another bus, do we have any bylaws that are in place when a private business comes to town in order to get their business license? Okay, you can have a business license if you provide this much transportation for your residents. That's not in place right now, and I think that maybe that could be something that would really address the issue, kind of forcing the hand of the businesses that are in our community to step up to the occasion and realize that they need to, in part, work together to make a solution as well. And who knows, we'll see how that gets me at work, but that's... So in closing, I just wanted to reiterate that this service is absolutely essential for everyone, and I know that you all know that up there. And if we could work together to find a solution and I know that the residents, the 120 residents of the Grand Prairie Care Centre, would be forever grateful. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Kelsey. I see some questions, or at least one in the queue. Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming to speak to us today. I'm just kind of curious. The city, our transit department does have accessible buses, and we do offer charter services. Is that something that you've ever explored, and something that might help with you?
Yeah, we have a certain budget which we work within. So I know that we, even DTS, at one point we could charter that bus, say, to go to the museum, but a lot of the time it's just way out of our budget. As far as riding on public transit, it's kind of the same considerations that other people have, that the bus stops are too far away. There's the accessibility of the people on it. We take a lot of residents out that have dementia. And so if we put too many steps into the process, it's not going to be successful for them. And so that's why we don't go that route.
And sorry, just to be clear, I'm saying that the city offers charter services. Have you ever specifically looked at the city charter services?
No, I have not.
I'd encourage you to take a look and see if you can do that. I know that.
You know anyone that can get us a deal?
Well, I think we actually offer $30 less an hour to nonprofit groups, and I don't know what the criteria of that is. But we're not nonprofit. That's the problem. Is we're kind of in a tricky spot. So we are a private company, so we are for profit, but that doesn't mean that profit comes down the line. And I'd encourage you to look at it. Maybe there's something that can be done to help with social profit companies like yours. But I would encourage you to look at it in terms of, I've booked a lot of buses for a lot of groups, and I'm not doing that anymore. If I would have known that the city charter services were available, I would never have gone anywhere else, because it's a significantly better deal for around the city than anything.
Those are wheelchair accessible, and
yeah, I'd encourage you to talk to our transit department, but I believe all of our buses are.
I was told that there was only limited wheelchairs able to get on there, like maybe one at a time. Is that correct? On the city buses, how many can you get on at one time?
I think I'd encourage you to Google City Grand Prairie Transit Charter.
Yeah.
Talk to our staff. I don't want to get too in the weeds considering all the people here, but I'd encourage you to look at that. That's something that, as a guy that books a lot of buses, something that I wish I'd known about back when I was.
Yeah, good information.
I don't see anybody else in the queue. Kelsey, thanks very much for your presentation and for some of the helpful suggestions and your perspective as somebody who works in one of the facilities. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
The next that I had on the list, and again, this was sort of a provisional, was Melanie Cheeseman. Melanie, are you here? Did you wish to speak still? Melanie, are you here? She might not still be here, or she might have decided that she doesn't want to speak, and in either case, that's okay. That was the end of the list of people who had let us know ahead of time that they wish to present. I think we've had a pretty good balance of perspectives. Is there anybody else that wanted to speak that hasn't had a chance, that has new information that hasn't already been shared? If there's something that you've felt hasn't sort of been shared, then by all means, we want to make sure that you get that opportunity to share with us. Come on forward, please. And since I don't have your name on the list, that means that I'm not going to mess it up when I say it, because I don't know it. But if you could introduce yourself for us.
My name is Sarah Clegg.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm actually one of the newer bus drivers that started with DTS just over a year ago. I just want to clarify something that I keep hearing, and it actually really bothers me. Our dispatch does a really damn good job, the best job that they can with what they have. And it's a computer system that definitely needs to be updated so that things work on us. But a lot of this is addressed to the people behind me. What they don't understand is when someone books an appointment, yes, we are all over the place. If we could dictate when people could have their appointments and when they got home, then maybe we would have more flow. But you can't make something flow, and you can't make buses arrive at times when people have set times for their appointments for us. That's the challenge that we work with. It is nothing like your regular city transit, which runs in a circle and arrives at a certain spot at a certain time, and it also needs to keep moving because it's on a time schedule. We do try to work to our time schedule, but we have many, many issues in the sense of one of them is time that people need to book for their appointment. The other thing also is that we have weather problems. We have all kinds of issues that happen all the time. People aren't ready. Or we are doing those extra things that Denise said and addressed to. There are way too many buildings in this town that do not have wheelchair accessible doors or even the push button. Just one of the big things that we do is we will make sure that they get in that door. We also make sure they get out that door and back onto our bus. I don't see a taxi driver doing that. I don't see a city transit person doing that. And I always thank somebody if they do it for us.
Sarah, thanks very much. I appreciate that you wanted to get up here and make that point of clarification. I don't see anybody in the queue with any questions, so thanks for taking the opportunity. Okay, so it looks like we may have gone through everybody that wished to speak today and the different perspectives that people wanted to share. If that's the case, and I'll just look kind of around the room one last time and see if there's anybody else that wanted to come forward. If there isn't today, anybody that hasn't had an opportunity to present, I'm sorry, we will have to make sure that everybody gets one opportunity to speak. Then I'm going to close the delegation portion of our agenda. We do have the item that was added at the start of our meeting before the delegations. That's item 8.4, where council will consider a motion related to this. And I would invite everybody to say we don't have a really large agenda ahead of that, but I will close the delegation portion of our agenda and we'll move on from there. And we'll move on. Councillor Bressy, you rang in just now. Did you have something on this point?
Sorry, I've got a point of order I'd like to make.
Sure, Councillor Bressy, what's that?
I realized at the beginning of the meeting I messed up the numbering when I moved amendments to this agenda. I've been informed that that the number should have been 7.1 leave of absence and 8.3.2 accessible transit. I don't know if we need a motion to amend that or if we can just do that as, but just for the sake of having clear minutes, if somebody's watched this meeting, I thought that I should clarify it.
Sure. Well, council passed the agenda adding those as 8.4 and 8.5, and so we'll go with that. I'd also recognize that this isn't something that is necessarily arising from the May 28th meeting. It doesn't come from that set of minutes, and so I'm not sure that we'd have it as a sub of that anyways. That's a bit of an inside discussion in terms of agenda management and numbering that probably nobody else is interested in except for us and those that have to keep the records. But we'll move on through unfinished business reports and into committee business. And the first item there was 8.1, the Infrastructure and Protective Services Committee meeting. Councillor Clayton, I think you handled that set of minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would move that council accept the minutes from the Tuesday, May 28th meeting of the Infrastructure and Protective Services Committee as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Anything we need to change before we adopt them? Seeing nobody ringing in, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Clayton, is there anything that you wanted to highlight briefly?
Sure, yeah, just briefly. During the meeting, we received a verbal service area update. Some of the highlights from that meeting included the sidewalk rehabilitation that was done, has begun in Patterson and Mission Heights area. As well at that time, and I'm not sure if the RFPs have closed, but we were looking for trail and sidewalk inspection RFP, a road inspection, and a traffic signal inspection, as well as we were tendering rehab of phase 5, which is infill in various locations. In addition, the hospital project, there was an update in regards to the hospital project. It's ongoing, and administrative is working currently with the new contractors. And the Parkade project currently, at that point, about 2 weeks ago, was 75% completed. In a brief update in crime prevention, the adult intervention is up and running. As well, the administration currently at that time, and as you're all aware, emergency management, our GPREP program was fully engaged and working numerous long hours to help the evacuees from the north, from high level and areas that were affected by the wildfires. And I think that's about it for now. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. That'll take us to item 8.2, the Corporate Services Committee meeting. And Councillor Plot, I think you're stepping in to handle that set of minutes.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. I just make a recommendation that council approve the minutes from the Corporate Services Committee meeting held Tuesday, May 28th, 2019 as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor Plot. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Are there any errors that we need to catch before we adopt them? Looking like there isn't, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Plot, anything you wanted to update us on?
Yeah, sure. A couple things. We had a director's verbal update from our director, Ms. Walker. She let us know that assessment and taxation are in full swing and everything was mailed out last week. So we'll probably get a few phone calls on that. And I'm sure some people are opening up some of those if they haven't already. We also had a financial management update that administration is working with the managers on any budget changes, as well as preparing the 2023 budget and redefining the 2020 budget. And assistance is being provided to the managers regarding financial review of the 29th forecast. So nice to see there's some more financial management happening, which is always ongoing. And in our informational technology services, a kickoff meeting was held with High Tech as the highest evaluated proponent of the printer services project. And after that, we just went through our outstanding list, and it was a pretty mild meeting. A lot of us were off to FCM, so I stepped in for Councillor O'Toole on this one.
Thanks very much, Councillor Plot. That'll take us to item 8.3, the Community Living Committee meeting, and I think you're also stepping in on that one too.
You bet. Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. So I just make a motion that Council approve the minutes from the Community Living meeting held Tuesday, May 28, 2019 as presented.
Thanks very much, Councillor Plot. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Again, seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Plot.
There was a couple of highlights again from Director Miller, who's acting as our city manager today, that the CKC and the Twin Ice Arenas, the annual maintenance of the shutdown of the centers occurred from May 31st to June 21st. So we'll be switching into summer season on those. And that's the Community Services Strategic Marketing. Equity Rentals is a new sponsor of the Eastlink Center Squash and Racquetball Courts. And Tim Hortons has signed up for an upgraded sponsorship agreement, including the Toonie Swim at the opening of our outdoor pool. And there was a few other updates around parks.
Thanks, Councillor Plot. And I think we had some business arising from the committee.
Correct, yeah. So I would make another motion. The council approve the submission of a resolution on the children's health care to the AMA convention. Just to speak to that, one of the things that's we had, Alberta continues to have the youngest population in Canada, with nearly 20% of its population between the ages of 0 and 4. This is an opportunity for us to get a resolution in front of AUMA, and something that I would encourage us to do.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Plot. I'd note to council members there's a revised version that's here in front of us. We have slightly passed the deadline for submission, but AUMA was aware of our council schedule, and so they're aware that this is going to be coming. They're okay with that. And the main operative clauses here are to ensure that enhanced healthcare for children is available outside of the two major hospitals that focus solely on that, the Stollery and the Alberta Children's Hospital, but also in partnership with them, using those two as hubs, but increase care in regions like Grand Prairie. And so the intent would be to get support of the AUMA members to lobby the province to make those enhancements. Is there any other discussion or debate on Councillor Plot's motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. And I think that brings us to our additional agenda items. And the first was 8.4. Councillor Bressie, was that you?
Yes, I'd love to speak to this one if I may. And where this agenda item comes out of is something that did happen at the last community living. So business arising from that was there was an in-camera meeting with the members of council, president of the DTS board. And this is our first city council meeting since that happened. And I think given what was learned to that meeting, it is appropriate to take some action at the very first council meeting since that meeting happened. I think that I'm going to make a motion that I don't know if it sets in place anything that isn't already happening, but I think it's an important motion to reaffirm council's commitment to what is happening and endorse the work that Mayor Given and our staff have been doing quite urgently ever since recent announcements got made. And how my motion reads is I would move the council affirm the importance of accessible transportation in our community, direct administration to ensure Disabled Transportation Society receives funding through June in accordance with the approved 2019 budget, and report back as appropriate with alternatives for accessible transportation should DTS cease operations or continue with modified service. And just to speak to breaking it down, I appreciate it's a longer motion, so I'll break down kind of the clauses in that. First of all, I'm saying affirm the importance of accessible transportation in our community. I think that goes without saying that unanimously council, I assume, supports accessible transportation, sees how crucial this is, but it's worth getting that on record that we see how important that is. Direct administration to ensure Disabled Transportation Society receive funding through June in accordance with the approved 2019 budget. Again, that's not anything that wasn't already happening. Back in December, we set the 2019 allocation for DTS. That has not changed since it was set in December, but I think it's important to get on record that we don't expect that's changed through June. Now, the reason I said through June isn't because I think we should stop funding DTS after this. I hope that this service continues to go, but given recent statements by the board, if services dramatically cut back or if it ceases, then obviously we need to re-examine that. So that's why this motion only speaks to June. The intent is not to cut back funding given its current operations, but to realize that it's an emergent situation. And the last clause is, and report back as appropriate with alternatives for accessible transportation should DTS cease operations or continue with modified service. And again, recognizing that we don't get to just wash our hands and say, well, shucks, we don't have that anymore if the service continues in its current course, saying that we do expect administration ourselves to do the hard work of making sure that these people who deserve to get around our community can get around this community. So I hope council will support this motion.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bressy. Councillor Plot.
Thanks, Chair Given. I guess I appreciate the intent of the motion. The one concern I have is that it doesn't talk about the level of service being provided at the previous level of service. And when we approved that budget originally and the conversations we were having today, I'm still confused about why the level of service has changed, to be honest. I don't know what's changed. The funding was there. And so I like the motion. I want to continue to fund. I don't think there's anybody on council that doesn't. I just would love to see it somehow be reflected that it also comes, the funding also comes with the service levels of where they were and we expect them to be at for the funding. So I just want to hear what the rest of the council says, and I might be looking at making an amendment to that just to capture that wording, because I do think that's important. The community not only recognizes that we're funding it, but we also expect the service level to stay the same that it was. And this surprise that just happened, that kind of surprised all of us, as well as the room that's sitting here, needs to be addressed immediately. And I don't know if just by saying funding them that we're addressing that concern in the next month. And that is a huge concern for me.
Councillor Bressy.
Yeah, I think my concern with that is I really agree with your sentiment. I was really surprised, and actually, frankly, part of me was very outraged to hear the certain service cut. And so I agree with your sentiment. I think the worry with me is I have troubles figuring out how do we make that happen in terms of, I don't know if they can ramp up service tomorrow, because I don't know what their shifts look like. I don't know if they've already turned people away. And I think the intent of but that is one reason why this motion said only up to June. Why I didn't say continue funding throughout the year, because my expectation is that there might be a need to cut off or reduce funding if reduced service is going to be offered. So we haven't reduced funding yet, and I think that we should go into our meeting on Thursday in good faith, fully ready to continue at full funding. But you're right. I think if full service doesn't get implemented soon, then I'm going to be very open to the idea of maybe July 1st we do need to change funding dramatically.
I guess I'd just add also, Councillor Plot, that with this motion it speaks to I guess a couple audiences. First, the community, to make 100% clear that the City of Grand Prairie hasn't changed the level of funding to DTS since we approved our budget in December, but also really sets the stage for our discussion with the DTS board that we were able to confirm just this morning, that we'd be able to meet with them on Thursday. I understand that time has changed at least once, at least twice at the request of the DTS board, and that's fine. We're happy to accommodate that. But we want to provide some certainty about their operations that should give us enough time to figure out what the transition plan is. And I would agree that if the City of Grand Prairie and the residents who funded this service aren't getting the level of service that we were expecting when we provided that funding, then we would have to have a discussion about what would be an appropriate level of funding. So I would agree with you, and I would say let's see what happens over the course of the week here. I'm not sure that we can force DTS to increase their level of service, but I think that the expectation is 100% right, saying the City of Grand Prairie provided the funding that we did with an expectation that the residents would receive a certain level of service, and the board needs to decide what it would take to do that. And that would be a discussion I'd hope to have this week. Councillor Plot, anything further on that?
I guess my concern with that, Mayor Given, is that if we're going to provide the level of funding, that was for a certain level of service. And now we're going to say we're going to fund you, and they're not going to serve their customers to the level that they deserve to be served. And so that's a concern I have. And I think we're running a little bit of a risk by not addressing that now, that DTS can continue to just, in my opinion, run offside and go rogue on what was agreed to at budget and what we thought we were going to get, and as far early as back as March that we were supposed to get. And I don't think this necessarily protects the city and the people that use our system in the next 20 some days until something happens. That would be my concern. I really don't. We're meeting with them on Thursday. Something could happen, but we don't have another council meeting for 2 weeks. And so I don't know how we would address that if the level of service doesn't come back to where it should be for the community and where we expect it to be for the community. I don't know how we address that quick enough if we don't do that. And I'm very concerned for the people sitting in this room that it sounds like if they did a midnight change and switch on how they're doing it now, what assurances do we have that they're not going to continue to do more changes and we're just funding them? And so that's a concern for me. I want to support the motion. I want us to get moving forward. I'm just very concerned about giving more funding to a group that right now, in my opinion, is acting in very bad faith on some people's lives in Grand Prairie.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. Well, certainly the motion has essentially 3 operative portions, and it might be reasonable to split those across 3 different parts, and so people can support the different parts rather than having to vote against one of the 3 different, or multiple of the 3 different ideas. So we'll do that. And Councillor Bressie, I think the first part was about council affirming its support for accessible transportation in the city. Is that correct? Okay, so let's have a discussion and debate on that point. Is there any discussion, debate on the point of council approving a motion to affirm its support for accessible transportation in the community? I don't see anybody ringing in, so that being the case, then I'll call for the vote on that part of the motion. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. And so the second part of the motion, Councillor Bressie, was with respect to funding, was it not?
Yeah, so I'll reread it. It's direct administration to ensure Disabled Transportation Society receives funding through June in accordance with the approved 2019 budget.
Okay, so that's the one that we'll discuss and debate. I think Councillor Plot, you made your position clear on that. Is there any other discussion and debate on that point? Councillor Plot, if you want to reiterate, and then we'll go to Councillor Bressie to close.
I'm just looking for maybe a point, or should I be asking to amend this motion now?
Well, you can absolutely make a motion to amend that portion if you wish, yeah.
So I would just amend it and add what Councillor Bressie's motion is that the expectation is to be at the same level of service provided that was previously provided till the end of June.
So to add to the motion, with the expectation that the society provide a level of service equal to what was being provided prior to the recent change.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we're all clear on the amendment that Councillor Plot's making. Discussion and debate on the amendment. Sure, and I'll just look at Val if she's Val.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So I got off, moved by Councillor Plot to amend the motion to with the expectation that the society provide the level of service which was previously provided through the budget process.
Previously committed to. The second portion with respect to funding and saying that the City of Grand Prairie will continue the funding to the end of June with the expectation that the service level would be the same as was previously proposed prior to the recent change. Yeah, thank you. Okay, team effort. So is everybody clear on the intent of the amendment, Councillor Plot? Any discussion or debate on the amendment? Councillor Bressie?
Yeah, I'm struggling with this in terms of I do think that is a clear expectation that we should have, given that we've only known for a very short time that was possible, and I'm still not clear on what's changed. It is an expectation I want to have. At the same time, I'm weary about making this into direct food administration just because I don't know how we enforce or what happens if that service doesn't resume. So, for example, if they don't have full service starting immediately after this motion is passed or starting tomorrow morning or whenever, what's that mean? Do we give them no funding for June? Do we give them a portion of it? I just have troubles figuring out what the implementation of this looks like if we give this direction to administration.
Councillor Bressie. I'll say that I won't be supporting the amendment. I appreciate the intent. I think I would agree that the residents of Grand Prairie, through the city, provided funding to DTS under the understanding of the level of service it was going to provide, and I think we need to get back there. I believe that both the board of DTS and their employees and the City of Grand Prairie share a common concern for the users of the service. And I think with that common concern at the forefront, we have an opportunity to really establish that without the city having to provide this direction, which I think, as Councillor Bressie noted, would be challenging to require, recognizing that they are an independent organization. About the only thing we could do is withdraw funding, and I'm not sure that we're in a position to be able to do that. And so I think, so for those reasons, and in sort of the spirit of collaboration between the board and the city, I think in good faith we all want to get to there. I think that's a shared goal, and so that's why I'm not sure that it's necessary for us to add it as a condition. I see Councillor Friesen's in the queue. Councillor Plot, can we come to you to close?
Thank you. I really struggle with this as well because I would like to see service restored as quickly as possible, but I do have faith that this decision was not made lightly by the board. They do want to, I know the board, and they do want to provide every possible service that they can for the riders, and I know that that is important to the drivers, that's important to the executive director, and I think that now, given the time of year it is, there's some pressure off with education trips, and I do have faith that the board and administration of DTS will restore the trips as they are able to, as soon as they are able to, because I do know that they want to. So I will not support the motion, the amendment to the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Kevin. First of all, I'm very surprised the service already cut in. We haven't done anything change for the funding. That was a big surprise today to me. And the second, I think I will support the motion. The reason behind it, we need the service provided ASP. I agree with Dylan's what he's saying, if they don't, then we're going to do portion or whatever. We'll see how quickly they can do it, but we need the full service, and we cannot wait. Those people need the service. We should provide them right away as soon as we can. Doesn't matter how we do it, we should do it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Minhas. So we'll go to Councillor Plot to close on his amendment to the motion. Councillor Plot.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I really, really think it would be remiss of us not to ask for them to keep this level of service. Otherwise, why are we funding them? I mean, we approved an amount of funding. So if we're worried about administration having to work on did they provide service or not, if they're choosing to just not provide a service, do we not owe it to the rest of our ratepayers and taxpayers, our customers, to not pay an organization that is not providing the services that we gave them the funding for? If we gave another group a level of funding and they decided halfway through, we don't want to do that. Would we write them a check in good faith hoping they're going to continue to do it, or would you expect them to do it? And I think we really need to expect them to do this. We have to ask them to honor the commitment they signed, they have agreed to, they've worked on it with us. And it would not be fair to the rest of the taxpayers and the customers of our community to just blindly give a bunch more funding to a group that I feel really in diligence of what they're doing right now hasn't acted for the best of our community. And it's really frustrating to me that I can appreciate we're going down a path with a lot of conversations. I feel we got completely blindsided on this, and so I don't know why we'd fund them. So administration is going to have to work out funding one way or another. Did they provide the service or did they not? And if they don't, are we going to ask for money back after we fund it? So either way, this is unfortunately going to be work for administration. I think we have to protect our community, though, and make sure this gets looked after ASAP. We also have to protect the taxpayers to show them that we're going to diligently look after their funds. We're not going to just write a check if you're not going to do the work you said you were going to do.
Thanks, Councillor Plot, for that close. So we're voting now on Councillor Plot's amendment or addition to the motion. And so I'll call for the vote on Councillor Plot's amendment. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. And so we'll move on to vote on Councillor Bressie's motion relating to funding as amended. we will go, if there isn't any other discussion, because we have gone around this one a couple times, then I'll go to Councillor Bressie to close.
Thank you. Something else that I do think is important to say is we've talked about what happens if DTS doesn't live up to the expectations we set when we set these allocations. And I agree it is very important to have accountability for that. And I agree that we have to take a good hard look at what we do if that happens, and that should include some of the alternatives that have been talked about. The thing I do want to point out, though, and another reason why I made this, why I referenced June instead of throughout the year, is because we also, I do think, need to be open to going the other way with accessible transportation funding, in terms of there is a chance that DTS is doing everything they possibly can with the resources they have, and if they can convince me that they are being responsible stewards of taxpayer money, and they legitimately lead an increase of service of funding, and that funding will be well managed, then I am very open to increasing the funding we give this organization. Similarly, if we look at this and we find other alternatives that are needed to backfill DTS or do that, I'm very open to saying we need to maybe not fund more for DTS, but we need to fund more for other accessible transportation opportunities in our community. So I just want to be really clear that this is time bound for me, and it's important that we're only looking at June for both reasons, because I'm very open to increasing how much we give to accessible transportation. And in fact, my gut is that my gut right now, and I'm always open to changing my mind, is likely we shouldn't be increasing funding to DTS, but likely we should be increasing how much funding we give to accessible transportation through other means. So I just want to be clear about my intent with this motion.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Bressie, for that close. So we'll call for the vote on Councillor Bressie's motion, which has been amended. Do we need it read back? This is that the city provide funding up to the end of June as in accordance with the 2019 approved budget, and with the requirement that DTS resume level of service as provided prior to the recent change. Everybody's clear on that one? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. And then, Councillor Bressie, there was the third and final point about directing administration to identify other alternatives.
Yes, just to read it, just for clarity, it's the third clause was, and report back as appropriate with alternatives for accessible transportation should DTS cease operations or continue with modified services.
Okay, thanks very much. And so that's essentially direction for our staff on some work that they can do at the same time as we have the ongoing discussions with DTS about what other alternatives might come up. And some of those might have been actually shared today. There were a number of different ideas that were shared as well about improvements that could be made overall in the system. Any discussion or debate on that motion? I don't see anybody ringing in, so I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. I think that handles all of our business arising from that motion under 8.4. And I think that probably handles all of the business with respect to the Disabled Transportation Society for this council meeting. And so all of you are more than welcome to stay. We're happy to have people join us for our council meetings. And if you were ready to leave, that's okay as well. I just give you that notice that there's nothing else necessarily to expect at this meeting today. The City and the Disabled Transportation Society Board will be meeting later on this week, and I would expect that the City of Grand Prairie, certainly for its end, will do our best to ensure that residents and people who rely on the service are aware of those ongoing discussions and any things that arise. So we'll move on to item 8.5. This is a proposal for extension of leave for Councillor Blackburn, who is away for medical treatment. I've had a chance to discuss with Councillor Blackburn. He's currently undergoing another round of cancer treatment, and he thought that it would be appropriate if we provided leave up to our first meeting after the council break, which would give us somewhat time to assess how this round of treatment has gone, and then be in a position to work with him to make some more decisions. And so I believe that first council meeting after the council break is August 12th. So if I could get a motion to approve leave for Councillor Blackburn up to August 12th. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I would move the motion as mentioned. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Councillor Bressie.
Thank you. I've actually got a couple of questions for administration on the motion, if I may.
Sure.
And the first is reading the MGA. My understanding is what the Municipal Government Act says is if a councillor misses council meetings for 8 consecutive weeks, then they need a resolution of council to continue in their role. Reading it, my understanding is that at the end of this leave, those 8 weeks wouldn't be reset. That we're already in that period, and basically August 12th, council would need, if Councillor Blackburn wished to have more time, and we're still sussing things out, that we need to pass another resolution, would not automatically be another 8 weeks added on. Do other people's understanding match with my understanding?
So I'm not sure if, unless Ms. Norris-Kirk has something. Ms. Norris-Kirk?
You're correct, Councillor Bressy. I have checked with Municipal Affairs on it, and that is the case, yeah.
Great. Thank you. And then I've got one other question. Have we discussed at all if council did call a by-election, how long that would actually take in terms of, how long is that process? If I really hope we don't have to do that, but if we do, how long does that take?
Ms. Norris-Kirk?
Thank you, Councillor Bressy. There's certainly a couple options. One could be a by-election. The other option is if council chooses to continue to extend the term for Councillor Blackburn, council has that option as well. It will be dependent on how he can resign his position as well. So I guess that assessment will be done in August as time gets further, and then council can have further discussion on that matter.
But what I'm asking is if we did have the unfortunate circumstance where Councillor Blackburn did resign and we needed to call by election, how long does that process take?
So there's a 6-week, there's a 90-day notice, and then there's a 6-week period between when council determines that date, or sorry, it won't be council, it would be city manager would determine that date, and then from that date, there's a 6-week period from when the by-election is actually held.
Sorry, is that 6-week period on top of the 90-day notice?
Correct.
So it's, I'm just doing my math.
So, Councillor Bressy, can I advise, pretty administrative, appreciate, so council has passed the motion to provide the leave. These are details that we can absolutely work out offline.
No, it's pretty relevant to me in terms of I'm figuring out how long citizens are without full representation on council. So I appreciate it. I got the answers I want, but I would suggest that those aren't administrative questions. Those are very important.
And they are absolutely ones that we could find answers to between now and the 12th, and then base our decision in consultation with Councillor Blackburn, our colleague who's away right now, base our decision in consultation with him that we would make on the 12th on all of that information that we would gather between now and then.
Well, what I'm suggesting, I mean, I guess it's unfortunate that this wasn't on our agenda and I wasn't able to answer these questions. Forks, I will be. I think that how long that process takes does affect whether or not as we're considering how long a leave we give. I think those should be parts of our conversation. So, I think it's unfortunate that we weren't able to have those conversations and that this wasn't on our agenda. But that being said, that's fine. I got the answers I want. But those answers were very important to me approving this leave. That wasn't an administrative curiosity. That was important to me informing my vote that I'm about to make.
Sure. Thanks very much, Councillor Bressy. As Council will remember, we provided leave up until this meeting, and so it wasn't a surprise to anybody that this would have to come. And so would remind everybody of that. But that being the case, we have some additional information that'll enable council members to make their decision today. Is there any other discussion or debate on the motion? Councillor Plot.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I guess I had similar concerns, and you're absolutely right, Mayor Given. I don't know why I didn't address them earlier, because we've had these kind of conversations. It wasn't on the agenda, so it didn't tweak me to think about it before. But so if I'm understanding right, August 2nd would be the date, and we'd be about 90 days and then 6 weeks. So we'd be looking at a Christmas sort of if for some reason Councillor Blackburn didn't come back, it would be about a Christmas time when we'd be looking at a by-election potentially. Is that sort of the timeline? Just so I'm okay.
Okay, any other discussion or debate? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. I think that handled our 2 additional items, and we have no items of correspondence this afternoon. And with respect to delegation business, so we do have 2 delegation sessions in our new council agenda. After we take a recess, we'll come back for public hearings. But we did have all the presentations, I think, were related to DTS. I would imagine that that has really been dealt with via the motions. So we could maybe make a motion to receive the DTS, the public presentations for information. Yeah, Councillor Friesen?
Thank you. I actually have a motion to make regarding the bus passes for clients. I'm happy to make it now or after the meeting later. So it's just asking administration to provide a solution so that a caregiver can board a bus at no cost with a special needs client. So I'm not sure what that looks like, whether it's whether that's through a companion bus pass given to support workers, or that when one of those special needs bus passes is presented, that a companion can accompany them at no charge.
I wonder. Appreciate the intent.
So how's the best to handle it? Is what I'm asking.
Within Councillor Bressy's motion was some direction to administration to identify opportunities to support a range service. That was pretty broad. I wonder if this would be covered there, or maybe a motion to refer this specific idea to administration for consideration in that. Sure. I think in either way is probably fine.
Yeah. Then I will move that within Councillor Bressy's motion that was passed for the third motion, that include the consideration of companions being able to ride public transit at no charge.
And care aids?
Companions, care aids. So it just a companion, whether it's a family member assisting or a employed care aid assisting.
Okay.
That's why I left it broad as companion.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. Any discussion or debate on Councillor Friesen's motion?
It's not even.
Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. And can we also get a motion to receive the public presentations for information? Councillor Bressy?
I'd move that we receive the public presentations for information.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Bressy. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion carries. And that would take us to notice of motion. Council, there is a notice of motion from me, and I will admit that this is the first time that I've, as the chair, have made a notice of motion. But as Council has previously discussed, we need to provide administration some guidelines as they move forward with developing the 2020 budget. And the intent of this notice of motion is to speak to that. Obviously, we'll have discussion debate next council meeting, but this serves as notice that that will be coming forward. And at that time, I would need to move from the chair, so somebody would have to take over the chair of the meeting for that period while I make the motion. No action today, but that sort of, I guess, notice is served, and we'll deal with that at our next council meeting. I believe that handles all of our items of business for this for this afternoon session of council. We will now recess and reconvene. I believe is that at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock. So, council members, you've got half an hour, and we will see you back here at 6 o'clock for the second session of our council meeting, which would include public hearings related to amendments to the municipal development plan and land use bylaw specifically related to small lot subdivisions. And with that, we are in recess. Thank you.